Hey YouTube, this is Leon K. If you saw my other video where I introduced the Tiger Game.Pi and you were inspired to build one of your own, then you'll want to see this because in this video I'm going to crack mine open and show you the internals, and hopefully it may help give you some guidance and directions on your journey of building one of your very own. Alright, so let's get started. In order to save some time, I already removed the 4 screws that secure the rear portion of the case to the front. These are the 4 standard hole and post locations of the Tiger handheld. So we'll go ahead and open it up. And there she is. So I'm going to give you a close-up look at all the components together, and then I'm going to try to give you a description of how I fit everything in and any difficulties I had. So we'll go ahead and give you a quick close look up. And while I'm at this, I'll go ahead and just describe all the parts. So this is the right button. This is the left button. This is the breadboard. This is the speaker. This is the Raspberry Pi Zero. This is the Adafruit 2.2 TFT, the non-touch version. This is my USB audio device. This is the power switch. And this is the power input. Alright, so we'll go ahead and start off by talking about the Raspberry Pi Zero and how it's married together to the Adafruit 2.2 TFT. So as you can see, these array of pins here on this side of the Raspberry Pi Zero and on the other side of the Adafruit 2.2 TFT, there are these pins that run all the way through from this side to the other side of this LCD, and along on the inside there's this piece of plastic that holds all the pins together. So you fit the pins into one side or the other, and then you solder them all together through these array of pins here on this side and on the opposite side. And these wires here are the GPIO wires, and these wires run down on both sides down to the breadboard. And this breadboard is what houses all the micro switches. Obviously, all the micro switches for the buttons. So you have the buttons, and under the buttons are the membranes that were the rubber membranes or the plastic membranes that were taken from the DS Lite. And then you have the micro switches on top of those or under those, and they go in a cross pattern here. 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and then a cross pattern here. And then they go directly into this breadboard. And this breadboard actually it's not one solid piece, it is 3 pieces. Since I didn't have breadboard that was big enough in order to fit this this whole portion of the case, I just made it fit here. You can see this right side. There's a line these 2 faint lines that run here and here that separates the left and the right side, and then there's one tiny strip down the middle with 2 soldering hole points or whatnot. Alright, so we'll talk about how these are all grounded. There's a grounding point on the TFT right here, and it's right this upper black wire here, and that upper black wire goes up and around, as you can see it here. It goes all the way down back into the breadboard, so it goes from the LCD into the breadboard, and then this grounding line right here, it directly has contact with this one because these 4 posts right here, this all go into a micro switch, and these micro switches, they connect. It depends on how you have them oriented, but normally they will be connected on one side. See right here and here, these are connected automatically. So when I connected this ground point around here, it goes onto this portion of the micro switch, and it's automatically connected to this portion of the wire of the micro switch. So whenever you press a button, it connects part of this ground here to either here or through here. And this is where I have this red wire here is where I have how I have the button wired up rather. And so this grounding switch goes from this portion of the micro switch to this portion, and then it runs down here and it connects this to ground, and then it goes through this wire right there and connects this one through ground, and then I have this one connected right here to this one, and this was grounded. So as you can see, the grounding runs all the way through here, connecting one side of the switch all together onto each breadboard. So this whole breadboard is all grounded, and these wires that come from the GPIO, they go down into the breadboard and they connect to the button. So whenever you press a micro switch, like a button, it connects the GPIO line into this ground. So it goes from ground to the button to one of the GPIO lines. All right, so we will talk about the speaker next. The speaker is from a DS Fat version. I pulled the plastic off of the DS case and I just cut it to fit down under here, under this breadboard. And then I have the speaker just laid in place right over the top. So the only thing holding the speaker into place is this breadboard. So this just uses pressure to hold that down. So if I need to pull it out, I don't have to do anything fancy to get it out. And the wire obviously runs through here. It's glued down here to keep it down nice and tight. And it runs down into the audio device. Alright, this is the USB audio device that I have set up. And I'll show you the packaging that came with it, so you know exactly what to order, or if you want to use it, you'll be able to find it. I got this on Amazon. I'll try to put a link in the description so you can, if you want to use this part, you can, and if it works for you, that's great. But what I like most about this part is it doubles as a USB audio device and a amplifier, because the Raspberry Pi does not have audio out. So this through USB, it performs an audio output, and it's also an amplifier. So that worked really great in my case, and it doesn't require any separate audio amp and also an audio out. So this is great. It's like two birds in one stone. So on this side of it here, this is where the USB header goes, like the USB plug. I desoldered that and have it running down these four wires, red, white, green, and black, right into here. This is the accessory port of the Raspberry Pi. This is the power port. And on this side, this USB audio device does mic input, and it also does audio output. So this is the audio output going down to the speaker. All right, next, I'll describe the power. This is just a USB female port, and what I did was I cut a hole through the case, fit it through, then I soldered all my wires, heat shrink them to keep them nice and secure. And then what I did was I put Gorilla Glue all over this because I wanted this to be very, very solid, and because this is the main way I supply power to this device, so I want it to be very stout. So what I did was just put Gorilla Glue all over it, and it is very, very sturdy. So I'm definitely happy with using Gorilla Glue on this. And one side is power, one side ground, and they run along here. And this, it's sort of hard to see in the video, but one of the lines goes into this power switch. This is voltage. So right now, since this switch is to the right, it connects the right side of the switch, and then the middle. If I switch it to the left, now it connects the left side of the switch and the middle. So this is off because it connects these two. And when I switch it that way, it connects the power back through here. This is the power, and this orange wire here is ground, and then that runs down into and supplies power to this whole unit. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is, well, actually I'll go ahead and touch on this USB audio device. What I do is I have double-sided 3M tape here to hold it in place, and then I have this piece of yellow tape here. This is called Kapton tape. It's good for electronics. As you can see, I used it here and here. If you've ever, and I've used it here as well, it's very good for electronic devices. It doesn't hold static and whatnot. It'll hold up to the heat. If you've ever opened up a electronic device, you may see this inside here. This is really good. I would suggest using this over electrical tape because electrical tape gets very sticky, where this one does not. This is more like a Scotch tape. It's very good, but it's made for electronics. Okay. So now we're going to move on to this unit here. This is probably the most difficult portion of making the Raspberry Pi, Game.Pi, is actually fitting the LCD and the Raspberry Pi Zero into the front portion of the case to get it to fit flush like that, to make it look like it's originally a part of this device. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I have this secured down, and then I'm going to pause the video and take it off. So as you can see here, this right here, these pieces it's weather stripping. So what this does is when I have the case on, it just secures this into place so it doesn't move. But even without this, I can shake this around and it will barely move. But it's very secure. And what's mostly holding this device down is right here. I'll try to get a shot of it. You can see a screw post right there. Now under there is a piece of acrylic, and that piece of acrylic goes to the breadboard. It covers the breadboard and it covers the LCD itself, and that's what holds it all into place. And this is just a secondary support system, but as I said, it's very secure. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and take this out and then show you underneath. And I'm going to show you what you have to take off, shave off, and whatnot to fit this into place. So I'm going to pause the video. Alright, so this was the screw here that was holding this LCD and the breadboard into place right here. And this is a standard screw post that you get in the, if you have one of these cases, it will likely come in this. So what I did was I just took a piece of plastic that was big enough to hold both sides down. And as you can see, mine cracked. I cracked it when I was shaking it around. So I've got to make another one. But this is what mostly secures that all into place. And it is actually very strong, stronger than what I'm making it out to be right here. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to the side. And I'm going to remove this assembly, this Raspberry Pi Zero and TFT. Actually, I'm going to take the wires off first. So I'm going to take these two wires off here. I'm going to pause it for one moment. Okay, so those are removed. I use them to pull them off with this pair of like medical tweezers here. So I'll just pull them off like that. Sometimes you need a pair of pliers to get them out. It's easier because they're very close together. So I'm going to move these out of the way and then pull this LCD assembly out. Alright. So, as you can see here, I glued these GPIO wires down. That's to give them strength and stability. These right here are the buttons that are on the LCD itself. I did not use those. Instead, I opted to use these buttons here because these were the standard buttons on the case itself, and I did not want to ruin the look of the case. I wanted to try to keep the case as stock looking as possible, or as original as possible. So I would have had to cut into this part right here, and then I would have had 2 rows of buttons and it would have looked weird. So I did not use these buttons here, even though these buttons are the same buttons that you can populate, that are populated here and here. Alright, so to me, I think this is the hardest part besides the software, which if you have the proper software, this project becomes immensely easier. However, the hardest part of physically constructing this is to fit this LCD assembly into place here. And the biggest thing that I can tell you, the biggest suggestion would be to take your time, slowly cut everything out, cut only small portions of the case out, and then fit it. Keep cutting and then refitting the case into place. Otherwise, you may cut out too much and then you might lose some of the support structure of this. So definitely take your time when you're cutting this out, and because you don't want to cut out too much, because then you're going to have to devise another method of holding the LCD down into place. So I'll just show you what I cut, and then maybe you might have to cut more out. Maybe they're slightly different, and these cases are slightly different, but for the most part I'm going to show you what I cut. I'm going to try to show you what I cut out in my case in order to facilitate this LCD. If you look closely here, we'll focus. I cut this out. This piece right here was cut nearly flush. This. Alright, this piece right here that juts out stood up much taller, maybe like around out here. This was cut down. This left side right here is cut nearly flush along the whole portion of the side. It's much similar to this right here, but this was cut almost all the way flush down to the case, and only a small portion, see if I can push this here, but if I go behind it, only a small portion is left intact. And that's in order to help hold this LCD into place, because what's holding this, what's basically keeping this squared up to the screen is when this goes into place, this side right here, this side of the screen rests on the inside of this, and then it goes out here and juts out just a little bit. So this piece that sits right here kind of just helps to hold it in place and keeps it squared to the front bezel. Down here, this was obviously cut out to facilitate these four buttons here. And if you look, I'm just going to touch on the buttons that are sitting in the front of the screen, because you have to cut this out too. That's what I found I had to do. Look down in there. You see that there's this black box. I tried to do this. There's a black box there in between all these. You can kind of see these little black boxes down there. Well, those are the micro switches, and between them are posts. See this white post here and here, then there's one here and here. This is what holds the membrane that goes to these buttons here. These membrane, a membrane sits over the top of those, and then these plastic posts stick out. I believe I cut those posts down, those white posts there. I cut them down in order to facilitate these micro switches. I know it's very difficult to see. There's a switch there, there's a switch, micro switch there, there's a micro switch there, there's a micro switch there. That's enough to fill up the 4 buttons here. I had to cut those white posts down, and then I fit those into place. Then the original membrane that came with this Tiger LCD goes on top of those, and then they stick out here. And if you look, these buttons are not flush. What I had to do to get these, because if I didn't cut these down, they would have stuck out further than these buttons here. They would have stuck out to maybe about right here, and it looks very weird, so I had to cut them down. I didn't do a perfect job. It's far from perfect, but what I did is I just put them down on top of a table, and I took a razor knife and I just chopped straight down. Chopped. So this, from this angle, it doesn't look good, but from straight on, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to pause the video and fit this back into place. Alright, so I was able to get everything back into place, and while I was at it, I went ahead and replaced this little piece of acrylic that was down here that broke on me earlier. And what I used instead of acrylic, because acrylic likes to fracture and break in half, what I did was I used an old gift card. So it gives it a lot of strength and rigidity instead of using a piece of acrylic. And as you can see here, it is quite strong. Just one little screw right here with a piece of plastic over it holds down the piece, this part of the breadboard, and also holds down the LCD. And these provide even more security, this weather stripping here. So before I close this thing up, I'm going to show you the left side of the LCD. And what I was trying to mention earlier, trying to describe earlier, is tiny. If you look right here, there's a tiny little slit in the middle here, in between this part right here. This side is the LCD, and this side is the case. And I told you there was a small little small portion that you leave out, because what that does is it helps to keep the screen into place, and it keeps it nice and stable and squared up. And if you look deep down in there, you can see the LCD, and right here is the case. So you just got to leave a little bit of piece of the case on the left and right sides, or left and right sides here, and it will help to hold this nice and square. Alrighty, well, I'm going to go ahead and close it back up. There were 2 things that I completely overlooked and forgot to address, and I'm going to do that now. The first one being what I had to remove in this rear plastic housing in order to gain more real estate. And also, I never really addressed how I was able to get these DS buttons to fit in place. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We're going to start with the back of the case. Just going to go really quickly, as quick as I can. Give you a better look here. As you can see right here, this is where the old speaker was. I took a Dremel and or a razor blade and scraped this off the circumference around this, and there was a ring here and a larger ring here. I just cut those down and drilled them off. On the back, this is where the battery originally, this is where it sits. There's a plastic housing that goes over it. What I did, I just took a Dremel and I cut this off. I actually had to do it a couple of times to make sure I got more space every time. So if you just cut it as close as you can to the second lip right here, then you'll be good to go. And these sat taller right here. Actually, I chopped those down as well. And if I take the back off, there was a tiny piece of plastic that I had that was running across here. I wanted to use it to epoxy this back piece on, but I actually like being able to remove this back piece, so I just went ahead and cut that piece that ran across. I just cut that off. I'm going to snap this back in place. Give you a better look. Maybe there's something that I forgot to mention. Oh, right here on this deep corner right here, I had to cut those down in order to fit the L and R buttons. So as you can see, I just drilled 4 tiny holes and stuck the buttons through, and then I Gorilla Glued them in place. Okay, so I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to pull this breadboard off to give you an even better look at the machine itself and how everything's set up. And I'm going to pause the video really quickly. I'm going to take this off, but before I do that, I'm going to show you where I have it all screwed down at. There's a screw here, a screw here, a screw here. The one I showed you earlier, it's right down here, and there's one there. So I'm going to pause it and remove these really quickly. So I pretty much had to completely disassemble the unit in order to show you everything, so I hope it's appreciated. Well, moving on, I'll give you a close-up look at the breadboard and the micro switches here. As you can see right there, that's where it was all epoxied together. And if you look, you can see all these micro switches are oriented the same way, with the legs sticking out on the left and right sides. These are all oriented the same way, and these are all oriented the same way. As you can see the legs there. However, these are not. In order to fit them in the case, I had to turn this one sideways, while these are oriented left and right. Left and right, left and right. This one's oriented up and down. As you can see, the 2 legs here, and this one, the legs are on the sides, on the left and right sides. Alright, well, we will go ahead and move on to the back of the case, and I'm going, well, rather the front of the case, and I'm going to show you how everything is set up in here. So the convoluted part where I was trying to explain the front half of the case, where the buttons work, I'll pull one out, and pretty much this, when you take yours apart, all these will be together in one solid piece, in one solid membrane, and there'll be another little piece that sticks into this right here. This is a reset switch. You don't need this unless you want to try to work this into your design somehow, but pretty much what I had to do is cut them all apart and then cut them very close on the left and right hand sides. Cut those down to where they would fit in between these posts, because normally, originally it was sitting on top of these posts. So it's just a solid strip all the way across. But since these buttons right here, since my micro switch buttons, since these stick out so far and so high, since they stick out so high like that, when they go into the case, they go very far up, and it exceeds past these white posts right here. It extends past these white posts here. These are the ones I was explaining earlier. 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Move this out of the way. So you have to cut these apart, stick them down in here. Or if you can devise another method, that would work. I would suggest you do that. Again, this is epoxied into place. Here's a little membrane to stop the speaker from rattling inside here. This came out of the DS case. And I'm going to go ahead and pull these button membranes off. These are the button membranes from DS Lite. Obviously, so are the buttons and the plastic that it sits in. Go ahead and pull this out. And I'm going to knock all the buttons out. Pick that up later. And I give you a look at all the button arrangement, so you can get a good look at how this all works. This was originally this button here, like that, and it sits down in place. What I did on the DS Lite case was I took this blue piece right here, then I put it over the part that I needed to keep, like that. Try to get it as best as I could, and then I just traced around it with the pencil. Actually, I used a Sharpie with a very fine tip. And then after that I just cut it out with a Dremel, then smooth the edges. And below the surface here, below this, there's a drop off. So see the way I have mine set up, it's smooth across. I originally wanted to flush, I wanted it to go down a little further, but it worked out better being flush because the breadboard or the perforated board or whatnot, it fits better. So I made sure this was flush, but it does drop down a little bit. It drops down like that and it goes in, and it's like that on both sides. Give you a look at this side as well. These are both epoxied into place. Okay, now I'll give you a look at the back. And I will show you the way the original button sat. These sat in here like this. And these posts, right there, you see those posts sticking out? They fit into these holes right here. And as you can see, there's this drop down I was talking about. So it drops into the case. And on this side, here's the original blue piece that fits in there. Get this straight. Well, it doesn't matter. But as you can see there, that's how it pretty much sat. And these stuck all the way through these holes, and then they were heated into place and they were melted down. So you're going to have to get in here with a Dremel and an X-Acto knife and chop this down in order to fit your DS Lite buttons or whatever buttons you plan on using. And then what I did was I just put a piece of cardboard over this. After I put this in place, then I put a piece of cardboard over this and let it cure with the epoxy. I use double bubble epoxy, and it has I believe it's a 15-minute work time or 10-minute work time, so you have to work really quickly and carefully, because otherwise, as you can see, there's a little bit of epoxy around it. You can see it right there. But I made sure that these didn't go out too far, they didn't go in. So I put a piece of cardboard over it, then I pushed it down on this side to where it sat flush with this side. Or maybe not cardboard, but you want to use something solid so this doesn't push all the way out. And then you'll be able to get that to fit in place, and you'll be able to get it to be solid by using epoxy. So that's probably going to be the best method. But if you can think of a better method, then I would definitely go with that. And that is probably it for the inside of the case. I hope it's appreciated. And let's move on. Alright guys, everything's back together. But before I let you go, I just wanted to run a quick speed test on this new SD card that I got installed inside here. My old card was just a standard SanDisk 8GB high capacity card. And my new card is a 32GB Samsung Ultra High Speed 1 Class 10 card. And I just wanted to show you the speed difference between these two cards. Currently it has the Evo inside. The old card, it would boot up to emulation station in 1 minute and 52 seconds. And I got my cell phone here. And what I wanted to do is show you how fast this one boots up compared to the old system. We'll just go ahead and run a speed test. And I'm gonna use 2 hands here. Start. Alright, we'll leave that on in the background. Now the old card, this old card right here, it would do it in 1 minute and 52 seconds. So we'll see what kind of boot speeds we can get instead. Let's keep the screen alive. There we go, starting to run the script. Emulation, that's under 1 minute. And looks like it's getting ready to boot up. I'm getting it ready to stop it. Once it goes to the loading screen, that's the full time. 1 minute and 11 seconds. So I went from 1 minute and 52 seconds to 1 minute and 11 seconds. So that's a vast improvement. So I'm very happy with that upgrade, and I got a lot more space. So now I have a lot more games. Final Burn Alpha, which the games don't run that great, but I got arcade games, old classic games, Dig Dug, Donkey Kong, Galaga. Back out here, I got tons more. I got more Game Boy games and way more GBA games. Game Boy Color. Everything that I had before, but much more. I have much more Genesis games now. As you can see, this is hours and hours of fun. Lots and lots of NES games. And finally, let's see, let's find Super Nintendo. So lots and lots of Super Nintendo games. So we'll just go ahead and load one up real quick, and I will show you what I implemented since the last time I filmed this. I did not have the sound, any sort of sound adjustment, but now I was able to gain some sound adjustments. I tried to use the config files, but I failed there, so I just ran everything through RetroArch. And if I press the hotkey button here, I can go up, all the way down. See, now I have volume control. And I can speed it up. It doesn't seem to be working right now. And I can also save states and load states, so it's much better than it was before. It's got a lot more features. And I'm going to show you how I did all that. I'm going to show you quickly. So you hold the hotkey. Press my button here. Let's see if I can focus in real quick. What I did was I went to settings, went to configuration, and right there when it says save configuration on exit, you turn that to on, and then you go to input. You go to input hotkey binds. Then you can change your state holding. If you hold the hotkey, mine is the select key. If you set up your RetroPie and the way I did, where you have your start and select, this is my select key, this is my start key, and to exit out of RetroArch, it just holds the hotkey, which is select, and then press start. But you can change all of that within here. And here's, if I hold the hotkey and press L, I can load the state. If I hold the hotkey and press R, I can record the state. You can go to, if you hold the hotkey and press B, you can reset the game. And the audio, I was able to adjust the audio by going volume plus, and hold the hotkey and you press up and then down to go down. So this is how you do it. I wasn't able to do it through the config file, which it was just confusing, and it wasn't saving the configuration. So if you configure it here, then you go back and you go to configuration and save on exit. This is what actually did it for me. So If you can't figure out how to do it, that's probably the best way to do it. And that's it. So there you go. If you guys want to build one yourself, I hope this video helps give you some pointers, and maybe one day you'll load up a video and I'll be able to watch one that you made. All right, guys. If you have any other questions, just comment and I'll get back to you. And I hope this helped. All right, guys. Take care.